So in today's video, I have fought every single enemy type. I went into challenge rifts and kept resetting it until I fought every single one, and I wanted to see just what's the weakest, what's the strongest, and if there's anything else I can learn from this. Before we get into the test here, I was 381 combat rating below the threshold, which means my damage was reduced by 78% and the damage taken was increased by 364%. So the whole point of this was when it comes to challenge rifts, you can really punch up on your challenge rift based on the types of enemies you face and then how lucky you get with the type of boss you face. So I wanted to see which one was the hardest, which one was the easiest, and kind of get a range on which enemy types I would want to keep and then which enemy types I would just immediately want to avoid. So pretty much the short version of this is going to be the difficulty of challenge rifts is all down to the ranged attacker and how fast their missile projectile speed is going to be. And if you have a really fast missile projectile speed, or it might not necessarily be the fastest, but it's pretty thick, then that is going to be where the majority of the difficulty is and where it feels hopeless. The ones that are really slow animations, those are the ones where you're like, okay, I got a chance here. And a lot of times they kind of have a lobbing mechanic that makes it to where they're easier to dodge. Where the ones that are really fast, those ones I would recommend just dodging, especially if you're trying to punch up this high. The reason why I went for a challenge rift level so much higher is because I really wanted to feel the difficulty. I wanted to see if there were certain challenge rifts where I would die far more than the others, and really kind of play and see if I could figure out how to beat them, stuff like that. And what I found is that pretty much the main difficulty issue is all just on the missile speed. Yes, there's other effects that the elites do that make it really difficult, and then the specifics of that are really hard to say, but I would say the ones that I really don't like are the grouping mechanics where they put that kind of gate around you. That one's really rough, and then also the freezing mechanic where it freezes the whole floor and then it's really hard to move. I think that one's really punishing too. All the other effects I can't really remember. I feel like the more you remember an effect, the more it's actually effective because it was actually a struggle that you had to beat, and those are the ones that come to mind as the elite effects that they put on the floor and make it difficult. All the other effects, like there's some where they charge up a laser, something like that, those are pretty easy to dodge, but when you combine that with enemies like the ranged enemies that have fast missile attack speeds, then it gets really brutal. But the thing that was actually hard was the normal minions, the ranged minions that are attacking really fast, not necessarily the elite effects. I would say the elite effects, like the other ones I mentioned, like the grouping one where it gates down, they just throw a random thing on the floor, or the freezing one, those are rough regardless of what ranged enemies you're facing. That's going to be the majority of it. But the thing about them is you got to look at their health, and the ranged attackers have about half the health of the normal non-elite melee attackers. So those are the ones you need to focus. They're the ones that are causing the majority of the issue, regardless if you get a slow missile speed or a fast missile speed. Those are the target priorities. Even though you're needing to find elite camps to actually make the time of the challenge rift. So the goal is going to be to find the elite minions, then group them up, and then try to target the ranged minions because they're half the health of the normal melee, and then the elites are double the. So it goes, you have the ranged minions that are, in this case scenario, 23 to 25k health. Then you got like 40k health for the normal minions and that are melee. Then you got 80k health for the elite minions. You want to group them up because you need to have big kills to actually be able to progress through the challenge rift in time. You want to be able to focus on the ranged minions. As you kite them around, what's going to happen is they're going to kind of organize themselves by ranged in the back and then melees up in the front. So escape moves like Daring Swing, I think, are doubly as effective because they get you out of bad situations based on the map. Like, let's say you get corralled in a really tight corner, but it also allows you to jump over those melee attackers and then attack those ranged minions that have a fraction of the health of the elites. So then you're able to take care of those, because once you take care of those guys, you're in no danger of dying, pretty much. So that's why I really like Daring Swing, and I think that's why people feel so good about Daring Swing. It's because it's working in two favors for you. It's getting you out of bad situations and allowing you to get on those ranged attackers and kill them relatively quickly. Even though they are really tanky, especially at these higher combat ratings. That's what I found to be the most effective. And also going in with the strategy, knowing that, okay, these guys have half the health of the other elites. I can really target these and really make sure I try to kill them. Then, now I think the next thing is going to be showing you guys which ones I think are really easy. These are the ones I would target. And then this is going to be important for trying to push like super high challenge rifts, because you need to have good minions to actually be able to push through and give yourself enough time to face the bosses. Because even the easier bosses, like let's say you get good RNG on the enemies, then you get also good RNG on the boss. You still need to be able to do a ton of damage, even if you're just free firing. Because what I was noticing, especially at this rank, like I got a pretty easy boss, and I essentially nonstop attacked this boss, and I still barely made it in time because it's just a big DPS race. I do good DPS. That's what's so difficult about these challenge rifts. It's just even in perfect RNG scenarios, keep that in mind. Let's get into the minions, and I'll show you guys footage of some of them. I'm going to start with the easy ones, and then we're going to go some of the harder ones that you should just avoid. So here is the example of, I think, one of the easiest ones here is going to be the bandits. And check these out. Notice how the ranged moves are so slow. Yes, they go onto the ground, but it's really not that big of a deal, because of just how, and I wanted to see just how hard those hit. It's still about the same fraction. Like notice how the ranged people, regardless of what type they are, I also want to see just how much damage they did on the ground there. The ranged attackers did about 10k. The melee attackers did about 7k. And then those things on the ground, like you shouldn't be getting hit by those anyway. I believe they hit for about the same. It was kind of hard to tell there. Multiple people hit me at the same time. I think the bandits are by far the easiest. Maybe there's some that are up there. There's a couple of them that also have pretty slow animations that we'll get into that were also pretty easy. But this is my favorite one. If I ever see bandits, I'm definitely going to run it. See, notice how I thought they were going to actually be kind of scary because you know how it kind of goes up in the air and then breaks into multiple parts. It's too slow. So I thought these guys were actually pretty easy to handle. Also, this is the biggest elite pack I've ever seen, so I wanted to kill it. Like, look at this, this is crazy. But unfortunately, that first pack ran away. It was a bummer. I wanted to see just how much progress it would get. Pretty easy to dodge. The AoE only hits for like 5k in this situation. And then when like 10k is like the normal hit. And then how slow it is. So it's easy to kind of dodge and move around. But notice how I'm getting into the back line here. That's why I think Demon Hunter is so good at this. First of all, they do good AoE damage. They do good single target damage. But then when they move to the backline, which is the big threat. It's very convenient that way. And if you're a melee class, in my opinion, you're going to have a really hard time with this. I mean, I think Barbarian does really good. From my experience as a Barbarian, Undying Rage is just absolutely hilarious when it comes to this. So I would like alternate between Undying Fury or Rage, be able to heal up. Then if that was on cooldown, then I would use a pot. That would happen. Fury would come back up, and I would alternate between the two. But I could imagine this being very difficult on a monk or a crusader. I mean, even though they have different tools and stuff like that. I don't want to get too far into the specifics of the class, but the melee tax is really big in this game. And I think that's one of the reasons why. It's very difficult to get to the back line of those classes there without grouping them all up and then having to attack all of them at the same time, versus you can kind of target them as, at least as a Demon Hunter. The ranged classes are probably going to have bigger punch-ups than the melee. And I think that's pretty clear. I think this is another group. Lusani is definitely going to be Lasuni, you know, whatever these guys are. I think these are a definite auto run through, and you should give it a shot. And then it's just going to be up to which boss you get at the end here. Here's a hard one. I'd say the Risen are actually pretty difficult. So this is that freeze I was talking about earlier. But their projectile's pretty quick, but it's not the quickest. I have seen faster, but it's a thicker one. So it seems at first like, okay, maybe I can dodge it, but it is very difficult to dodge. That is the other gate one I was talking about earlier that's really difficult to deal with. But if you can kill them, which, you know, looking at the life, definitely look at the life up here. There is unique enemies that are like berserkers or whatever that have more life than even the elites. So keep that in mind when you're doing these challenge rifts. I feel like it's never worth it to go for yellows. I would always dodge yellows. Yellows are the scary ones, and they're way too tanky to justify the 4 drops, in my opinion. If people disagree, let me know, and I would love to hear your reasoning on it, but I really think the yellow ones are totally worth dodging every single time. Here's that. Now let's get to another hard one. I just kind of want to keep this moving. Okay, Succubus and Deceivers. I think these are actually really difficult. See that those red orbs? Those red orbs are actually pretty quick. I'm not a fan of those. They hit for about the same. You know, each class is about the same. The health is about the same, whatever. The only thing that changes is the animations. I also feel for the melee, most melees are not scary at all. I do feel like there's something a little faster about the pole arms here. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know, but like these pole arms, maybe they're just so dramatic when they're doing their animation that I notice it more. But it really feels like they're potentially scarier for the melee, even though it's really not that big of a deal anyway. But I don't like the Deceiver / Succubus combination. I try to dodge this. Also, too, a lot of times they're in this hell map, and I just don't like the map. It's too closed off. You don't get big groups of enemies. So that's another factor too. And I feel like I don't want to get too crazy off topic here, but like you have to factor the map in, and you also got to factor the boss at the end. But just on the minions here, I don't like this group. And then last one that I think is actually really difficult. There's other ones that they're kind of fall in between here, but I feel like I don't want to like painstakingly go through every single minion. I feel like that would be really boring. I just want to go through the big ones that are a highlight to me. The highlight here as a really difficult one is going to be spiders. These are very tough. See that right there? It's kind of, it's a fast animation, kind of thick. I would say spiders are probably the hardest. I am definitely not a fan of the spiders at all. I'm just going to dodge them immediately. And just kind of watching this over and seeing the difference between bandits and spiders, it's like, okay, I don't feel bad dodging spiders at all. Like, this is definitely going to be something. Also, this is actually pretty, 3 elite packs plus a yellow. It'd be kind of sick progress there. If this was like bandits, this would be a sick run. But since they're spiders, I just die over and over again. It's very difficult to actually be able to dodge these. So I would dodge spiders. So that's pretty much it when it comes to the minion types here. And I think this is going to be a good, breakdown of kind of helping you guys out when it comes to challenge rifts, because this is a really important part of the game, but it's also a point of the game where you don't progress much. You kind of want to get in, get out as fast as possible. So knowing this information is going to make your time spent a lot more efficient, where you could just back out and go back in as soon as possible, because no one wants to waste time in challenge rifts. Even though they are impactful and they are a fun thing, I feel like challenge rifts are nice because this game is really only challenging when you're below combat rating threshold. That's when the game gets difficult. So it is fun, but I wish there was progress associated with trying to push this because it's such difficult content at the same time, which it isn't. So in that case, having this information I think is going to be really useful for you guys, so you can just go in, do your challenge rift, get out, so you can go back to grinding in the open world, back to farming, dungeons, stuff like that. Actual things that will progress your character. So I'm going to end it here, guys. I will have a video talking about each boss, probably as a separate video. I just don't want this to drag on too long. I just really want to cover this opening part here, because then it's like we're stacking multiple layers of RNG and stuff like that. So I feel like that deserves its own video. I'm going to call it here, guys. You guys have a good